welcome to my channel. Please subscribe, please hit like, and I'm going to give you a little bit update on this particular carriage clock. So as I was saying before, in yesterday's video, this carriage clock had a problem with two potential solutions. So this is a cylinder escapement, and the feet of the escapement, the escape wheel, go into a cylinder that pushes the balance staff clockwise and counterclockwise, as opposed to an impulse jewel like you would see on a pocket watch. You do see pocket watch kind of impulse jewels on carriage clocks as well. This is an old British carriage clock, I am thinking. And so I had two choices. One was to raise up the pinion that's on the bottom part of the escape wheel, or lower the balance with the cylinder part to make sure that the feet merges properly with the opening of the cylinder, because it was actually too low and it wasn't able to go into the cylinder to spin. So what I did is I tightened down the balance cock so I knew it's as tight as possible. Then I went underneath, and there's a cap jewel for the balance, for the lower balance staff. There's a cap jewel on there, so it goes through a jewel, then there's a cap jewel. And I noticed that the pivot for this is sticking way out of the jewel itself. Now I'm assuming no work has ever been done on this watch, which is a really bad assumption, but I'm assuming it worked at one point in time. So what I did was I took off the cap jewel, which is in a setting. So the cap jewel is just in a round plate with a flat jewel in a setting. So I removed that completely to see if it would work. It worked a little bit, but there was way too much friction at the base of that shaft with the jewel. It's supposed to be sitting on that cap jewel. So I reinstalled the cap jewel and I tightened it, and it wouldn't work because it was too tight. So I loosened that cap jewel just slightly, and there you go. So the merge, or the interface between the feet of the escapement wheel and that cylinder, is perfect right now, and it's running. Now my big problem here, though, it's running and you could deliver it like this, is that this is loose on the top. You can see that is loose, which means those screws, there's two screws on top, right here and right there, and those screws need to be tightened. And I actually, when I tighten those, will that press more on the top, which makes me either loosen the bottom part more or something else. Ideally, I'd love to raise up raise up the pinion that's part of the escape wheel on the bottom of that shaft, raise it up a bit, but it's almost impossible to raise up. I was going to put another jewel on top of the jewel that's there, because there's no way of raising that jewel up. It hits a base, and then there's a little bit of a tunnel, and that's it. So, and there's no way of getting that up higher, but there was a way of getting the balance and the whole balance assembly lower. So that is the solution. So I've got to disassemble this, take the power off it again, disassemble it, take off the balance cock and the balance complete, turn it around, tighten the top there, and then put it back on, and let's see if that works or not. So this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to remove power from this. And one more thing is that this has been running all night, which is great. So it's had, and not had much of a wind either. So it's been running all night on a partial wind, so it's actually set up really nice. It's a shame I have to actually do this, because if I was thinking this is it, it's done, right? It's been running all night, there shouldn't be any issue, but I can't leave it like this. In all sincerity, I can't say it's done, because this is loose, which means those screws are loose, which will cause an issue later on. So I'm going to see if I can take power off of this, right? And this is tricky. You don't want to harm yourself in removing power from this watch. So you got to go as though you're winding it, take your finger and then move that out of the way, and then let it sit back into a locking position, and then wind it, move it away, and then let it sit back into a locking position. And this is a pretty big key, thank God. So it's not going to get out of control, and it's pretty deep into the this is pretty deep into this, so I'm not too concerned here. Although somebody said I need to have a letdown tool. Well, love to have a letdown tool, but I don't normally do pocket watches, so it's very rare that I do this. And lately, there's some very nice gentlemen that have been saying to me, that asking me to actually do work on these pocket watches, because on these carriage clocks, because they're a lot like a pocket watch, and I kind of have the capability to do that. So now I've got two glasses with airy loops on them. My normal glasses, I installed a smaller airy loop on my normal glasses, and then I have my dual lens glasses with the airy loop as well, and these are much better for doing pocket watch work. They're actually designed for pocket watch work. So I'm going to remove the this. I'm going to move my microscope out of the way there. It's in my way. But I'm going to remove this now, and we'll see what the story is here. So I'm just going to get this out of the way, and very carefully, the balance is already in place nicely, so I know it's supported, and I'm just going to unscrew it here and remove it. And this is you could take the whole platform off to do this, but the platform itself is a nice support for this, which I think is great. So I'm just going to take my screwdriver and see if I can wedge it in there. I need to pick a little bit bigger screwdriver. And this is down nicely. And there's a slot in the back to remove this. I'm going to switch to a different camera. So this is a little bit of a closer view. So there is a slot in the back here, as you can see. In that slot, you put a screwdriver in there. I can put a pretty hefty one in there. And you just kind of twist the screwdriver to remove this. This is a really nice little clock, so it'll be nice to get this operating again. I'm always careful. I put my hands around the movement like this. I kind of put it around like that in case for some reason this decides to jump out. It's not going to go all the way down and ruin the hairspring. So I do that, and I have, I believe I can take this, flip it around on the mat here, and then work on it. I don't know how loose the hairspring is when you lift this up. It's not too bad. So there we go. That's the bare bones escapement right there. I'll have a look at this as well, but I think it's in fairly good condition. I just need to flip this around very carefully so it can be worked on. So do that and then put it on the ground like that, and now I can have a look at those screws. I really would like to tighten these screws without having to remove the hairspring, because it's all in position right now, so I'm going to try to do that. Now I know this is going to be declared as heresy in the watch world, but I'm going to grab the balance here and lift it up and try to free up some space to get my screwdriver in there, and see if I can actually move this aside a bit to get the screwdriver in there to tighten the balance. So I want to grab this with my fingers, because with a glove this is not going to a glove will not give me the amount of pressure I need. So these little screws barely need a turn, so it's just gonna so that's one of them. And now I'm going to work from the other side. Maybe I'll move my camera a little bit here. I'm not sure if this works any better for you, but move it up and then move it over and then move it down and make sure it's good and all that kind of stuff. I try not to edit my videos too much, so they're au naturel. The other thing I'm going to do when I'm finished this is I'm going to demagnetize it in case any magnetic fields are in there interfering with the balance. So there we go. So that's done pretty much. Let me just look inside here just to make sure I've got no other issues in here. It's been oiled already, but I'm tempted to put a very small drop of oil on that jewel. I also want to look at the pivot on this thing, because this pivot is a pretty damn big pivot. The pivot on this here is huge. And let me see. Yeah, that's one monster pivot. Looks like it's in pretty good condition, so we'll just assume it is. And I'm just going to put a drop of oil on this. Again, I'm going to lift this up. I was told that this has been cleaned already and oiled, so this was just sent to me for this specific reason of fixing this issue. What I don't want to do is touch the oiler on the hairspring on the way out, because it's going to cause issues. And the hairspring looks pretty good. So that's that. Now that's been tightened. Now what I don't know is that will that cause this to push downward more and cause me to have to adjust it again on the bottom of this platform, which means I have to disassemble the platform. Now the action on the regulator is much better right now. As you can see, it's providing enough friction now. It's not loose like it was before, so that's very good. So I'm going to have to look at the upper part of this and probably look under the microscope just to see if there's any issues at all with this. Now, like I said before, the play on this is the escapement, which I would love to have that thing be able to go up a bit more, as opposed to the other way around. So I'm going to put a drop of oil on top of that as well. Again, I think these were oiled, but I can't guarantee they were. And I'm using 9010, Mobius 9010 for this. Although there's probably enough friction to use a thicker oil, but I'm going to use 9010 on this. Of course, I used it all up with the other jewel here, so let me just go down in here. The other thing is I'm leaving leftover oil on the actual base here, so I'll clean that up after, but because I'm touching things as I go down. See if I can do this without touching anything. There we go. It's much better. And then I will access man's best friend, which is Rodico. I'm going to dip my oilers in the Rodico as well, but I'm going to use Rodico here just to do a little bit of a cleanup. And my cleanup will be right along the edge here. I need to sharpen my Rodico. There we go. That's a lot better. It's sharper. I can spread this oil a bit more. And I can use my tweezer to push down on the Rodico. There we go. And while I'm at this plate, I was told this was all cleaned. I'm going to just rub this down a bit, just in case that there's any dust or anything else that got on this that needs to be removed. Cleaner job, folks, a cleaner job. And okay, that's good. And now I'm going to do some hoping. And what I'm going to hope is that the adjustment on the top is not going to cause a problem. All right, now I'm going to put the balance back. I'm going to be very careful as I do this. I just don't want to drop it, so I've got it palmed in my hand here and just roll it over like this, like that, and then grab it with my tweezers like this. Of course, it's backwards, so just hold everything steady and move the movement like that, and I should be able to drop this straight down. I'm holding on to it in the back as well. so I don't have issues. Again, the alignment, I'm not sure if it's going to be perfectly aligned as I drop it down. What makes me nervous every time is I can hear my wife coming with her with the car. So I may have to get a little closer. No, that's good there. And then I have to get the pivots lined up properly. So I'm going to fart around with this to make sure it's aligned, and I get a little bit closer and make sure that that balance is lined up properly. So I just moved it ever so slightly and it looks like it dropped into place. There it is there, and I just need to put the screw in there. So I use a stick to hold down the balance cock. That's the Bergeron, or Bergeron, I guess, Bergeron plastic stick. And this is a stick here, and I just kind of use that to hold the balance in place while I put the screw down. That way it doesn't rattle around. So I hold that in place. Probably a smart idea to get the regulator arm out of the way, but I'm not going to. So all right, you dummy. I should have got the regulator arm out of the way. Let's do that. Thank you very much. I'm picking a big, the gray screwdriver, bigger head screwdriver here to screw this down. And while I'm screwing it down and tightening it, I want to make sure the balance is still loose. So I just basically move the balance as I'm tightening this just to make sure I've got freedom, and I do. And so I'm tightening this down. Oh, see that stop there? So I'm going to loosen that just a little bit because this part here went down. I may want to shim this up a bit actually, because this might be a better way of dealing with this. Just shim it up just a tad. So I'll loosen that up and then get my screwdriver in there. And I'm going to see if it runs and then decide whether I want to shim this or not. But I think it needs a bit of shimming as an adjustment because it is nice and loose right now. And I know if I tighten this down completely, because I tighten the upper part here, it's going to push down and on that, so a little bit of a shim is going to help. So let me just shim that and see what we do, and I'll show you how to shim it. So I make a shim with watch paper here, and I just need to cut off a little slice of watch paper and then roll it. So I probably don't need this whole piece, so I'll just make a piece around this big, and this allows me to grab it on either side. Probably around that big would do. Now, I think I told the story before, but every time I cut like this, I think of Mr. Dressup, who was a friend of Mr. Rogers, actually, in a Canadian broadcasting kids show when I was a kid. And he used to always make things with, like he'd make boats with milk cartons, which I thought was pretty cool. So in shimming this, I got to make sure I don't interfere with the studs. So I'm just going to fold this carefully a few times. Fold it and crunch it. So that's a pretty crappy fold there. I usually can do this with my tweezers, but maybe not today. What would be ideal is if you had a set of flat tweezers. They weren't tapered at all. And then when you fold it, you're not. So I'm trying to flatten out my tweezers as I fold this, so it's not. So like that. And then I can just take that and with my finger or my thumb maybe, there we go, fold that over. I'd like it to be uniform, which would be nice. There's one fold. I'll probably make quite a few folds here. There's a second fold. That's a crappy fold because this part didn't fold properly. Oh my God, I'm having fun today. I'm shitty folding today. I don't know why, but I'm not having a good time folding paper today. Let me see if I can do this any better on the bench block. Just fold it up like that, and then fold the other side. I know how exciting this is for fellow watchmakers to watch a guy fold a piece of paper. All right, that's pretty good there. That's two folds. Two folds and 20 years ago today. I'm going to just try doing this again. Like that. And then try the other side. There is no try, there's do and not do, right? That, just a note for those folks that are in the evacuating from Florida because of the hurricane. I feel for you guys because I can't even imagine the terror of seeing this Category 5 hurricane coming towards the shore, and you've got your homes and your families, and you're trying to get away, and all that other stuff is material stuff, but it is your life savings, and hopefully it's all insurable, but it is everything you have, and you're living in a very beautiful area of the world in Florida, but the negative part of living in a beautiful area, Caribbean waters and stuff, is that the hurricane season is there, and it comes every year. So I would, if I was living down there, I would live in an igloo shaped building so that I wouldn't be affected by hurricanes. So there we go. So that's probably good enough there. See all the folds I have there, and that's probably good enough. So I'm going to just cut this off very carefully. Just let it drop. So now I've got my shim. That's my shim. So now I've got to apply the shim to the watch. So this is usually an interesting part. So I usually take the one that's folded, the round part folded, like this. So just drop the shim down like that. And you can use a needle like this, try not to poke myself, to push that shim in. So I've got the shim on the other side, but you get the idea, right? There's the shim there. So make sure that this is loose enough. And while I'm raising this up to shim, I got to make sure that the pivot is still inside the hole and I'm not causing another issue, right? So let me just hold the shim in place while I raise this up a bit. I think I've got to rotate that shim around because I think it's facing the wrong way. You grab that. I want to make sure the round part of the shim is facing inward. So I want the shim to be like this. You gotta have patience to be a watchmaker, by the way, because every time you drop something you feel like swearing, but you're gonna drop a lot of stuff fixing watches, which means you're gonna do a lot of swearing probably. Just gonna rest it like that, and then I want to get my screwdriver in here again. See if I can raise that up, and then once I get that raised up a bit, I can use my tweezers. I'm just going to give you a different angle here because it's an interesting process. There we go, shimming 100. So get your tweezers here, and you should have a gap there that I can get underneath. See that? Now I should be able to slide this shim all the way to the other side if I'm lucky, because you want the shim to be balanced. I'm going to just move this shim to the other, over the screw here, because it's not aligned in the back, which means it's pushing out. So So I'm just moving this shim all the way to the other side, hopefully. And there it is. It just poked its nose out the other side. And now, while I'm holding one side like this, I use my needle and just push that back. So there we go. So now the shim is on both sides, as you can see. And if I lower this, is the bounce still going to stop? That's the question. So the bounce needs to be in there nicely. And I'm squeezing down, and the shim is doing its job. So the bounce is still free. And if I look at the end shake, do I have a lot of end shake here? I may have a little tiny bit of end shake. Just going both sides here to... Yeah, I do have a little bit of end shake. So this is a positive thing for me, I think, because it's lowering it. But is that end shake too much? Not sure. And if I screw the screw in the bottom a bit more, is that going to allow the watch to still work? So I'm going to screw this down a little harder to try to get rid of some of that end shake. As I do this, I also want to make sure that I can always remove some shim material too, but let's wind this thing up and see if it's going to operate. There, I gave it 4 turns. Let me give it another one here. Kind of started and then stopped. It's kind of moving now, but there's always something. Eh? I actually think that it's up a bit too high. So I'm going to look at where those feet are. Again, if I look at this, there's the feet of the escape wheel and where that's merging with that tube. So I may have put too much shim in there and have to remove a bit because it's raising it up a bit, right? Which I don't want it to. So it's nice and free though. Well, there it goes. So now it's starting to tick, but I still think it's too much shim. So I'm going to adjust the shim. Now when you're adjusting the shim, you just work backwards, but you're going to have to loosen the watch up just a bit to pull the shim out and use the needle. Again, the needle's good because it just pokes that shim and you can pull it right out. And as you can see, when it dropped down, everything seems to work. So it's just too much shim I had in there. So I'm going to have to take a couple leaves off my shim here. And I just open that up and just cut it. So it should work. I over shimmed. I'll take 2 leaves off the shim. 2 bends. Doesn't take much in the world of watches. So these are like little pocket watches. And so now I've got to take my scissors and cut this. It's the world of pocket watches, except they're carriage clocks. But they're really like a pocket watch. So let me just cut this where it is, and then I'm going to turn this around to see how much real estate I have to deal with. Yeah, I'm going to have to use my tweezers to hold this. It's so small. There we go. So that's done. Now I want to place that shim in there again. And so I'll take it from this side here again. I want to make sure it stays underneath the bounce as I'm doing this. There, it's showing up on the other side. And I'll nip that off with a razor blade after. So it's ticking away. Let me see if I can screw this up. So get my screwdriver out and tighten this down. And let's see if it keeps ticking. Yep, it's tightened down now and it's still ticking, which is great. So I've got that working. Yeah, I'm looking at this balance here, and there's a little bit of a warble, but there's nothing much I can do with that. So there it is. There's the interface. And that screw in the bottom is what I loosened up because I needed to loosen that up to lower the balance, but there's no reason that screw is not going to stay there. There's a lot of real estate on that screw too. Could put Loctite on there to make sure it stays in place, but I think it's fine like that. And the balance is ticking away. So, and now I can adjust the rate on this thing. So I'm curious if I put this in put this on my timing machine, what the rate's going to be. But I'm going to just line this up a little bit more. See, which way do I turn this thing? Like that. It is a brand new mainspring in it, so that's probably going to help. And I'm going to use a razor blade to there we go. I'm going to use a razor blade to actually trim the shim. Once I'm good with all that, I just trim this off with a razor blade, and you really can't see it once you've done that. So let me get this in the timer and see what I got. So I found the best app to use is the one on my phone, which is called Cuckoo Clock Calibration. This thing, you can do anything from a clock to a pocket watch on this, but I find it's pretty good. I just have to have the right beats per second selected. So let's see if I can do that. So if I select set reference here, it comes up with the references, and I know that I selected this one here before, 1800 beats per hour, and it's beats per minute is 300, so it loves that. So I select that, and then once I've done that, I have to hit done, and then this should record nicely what I've got here. So I'll see if I can just quickly record this. I got to change amplitude and everything else on this. So if I look at my beats per minute down below, it's showing 300. See my reference again? And my reference says it should be right here. It says beats per minute is 300.002. So, or the period is 199.99. So if you look at the very top, if I talk, I'm going to ruin it, but if you look at the very top left-hand side. This will tell me whether I'm running fast or slow. I just took a photo of it, so it looks like I'm running plus 333 seconds per day fast. So let me just get rid of that photo. Now it does seem like the regulator arm is not doing anything with respect to the adjustment. So it's running fast and I can't seem to slow it down. So I'm going to have a look at the regulator arm and see where it's sitting. Plus I may want to run this through a demagnetizer. Well, that's kind of it. I've got this thing running well. It runs very well actually. And I've got to see whether it can continue to run well. I'm going to return this to the other watchmaker, see what they think. Before it wasn't running at all, and I had two watchmakers look at it and say they couldn't figure out how to get this thing going. And I couldn't either when I first looked at it, but I'm going to slice those shims off with a razor blade on the edge and clean it up a bit from that perspective. And that should be good. This is a very old watch. It could be as old as 1800 or who knows. It's an old British watch, so it's got the very old escapement in it. So that's it for today. It got it running. I'm not sure if it'll ever keep time, but folks just want these things to run and not keep time when they're this old. I would have to do a lot more work on this to get it to be a timekeeper, but why? That's the question. So thanks a lot for watching. It's been an interesting little adventure. And please stay tuned for my next adventure, and we'll see if I can end up with another carriage clock on my desk. I'm getting more used to these, I think. So as I get more used to them and better at them, they're less scary and I get less annoyed working with them. But this one required a little bit of a shim to make sure that that balance was dropped down low enough to be able to interact with the escapement wheel. That was the big one here. So that was my solution. So thanks a lot, JD. Please subscribe, please hit like, and I'll take all your comments. Thanks. Bye.